Hi everybody, thanks for having me. My name's Mona Ives, and I'm an Islamic educator and lecturer, and I go around to whoever will have me talking about my faith and answering questions. I know a lot of people have questions these days, and so I feel like it's important to be out there and to answer the questions. Before I start today, I just kind of, on a sadder note, wanted to put it out there that, I know a lot of times when I go to different places, people haven't ever met somebody Muslim in real life and have never had a personal relationship. And I just want to put it out there in case I'm the only Muslim person you meet, that, what happened in Manchester is something that, we unequivocally, myself, my family, my community, my mosque, unequivocally condemn what has happened there. We don't believe it's part of our faith that teaches people to do this. And we grieve for the families and the victims and the people who are affected living there. And it's the same with whenever anything happens in the United States or whether it's overseas. Our hearts really truly go out and our prayers go out to those families that are affected. So I just wanted to start off by saying that because, some people could see it as insensitive that we're here to talk about something that they feel is somehow affiliated with recent events. So anyway, I'm here to do Islam 101 and a little bit about myself. I was born in Massachusetts. I grew up in West Boylston. And I initially went to BU to pursue a degree in international relations. Didn't take too well. And I ended up traveling abroad to Pakistan where I studied Islamic theology. I chose to specialize in comparative religion. That doesn't make me an expert in anything at all. It doesn't make me an expert in other religions, but I am familiar with the core tenets of other religions. I do have a son who's 22. He's a nursing student, and my husband back there is Steve. He's a convert to Islam, and we've been married for 17 years. And I like things like home decorating, reading, cooking, really boring stuff. I also like to talk about faith, and I like to do a lot of charity work, and I feel very passionate about the cause of refugees who are resettled in the United States. Why am I here today? So first of all, I'll just mention that, mutual respect is sort of what I do. I respect your choice of lifestyle, religion, point of view, and I just ask that you do the same for me. I'm not here to convert anyone. Sometimes when I organize these presentations, people call the library or the school or the venue and say, we don't want someone, teaching our children, or we don't want people indoctrinating us. And I just want to make it clear that I'm not here to do that. I'm not here to proselytize. I'm just going to talk about what I know about my religion, and I'm going to share that with you and answer your questions. I'm also not here for a debate. I'm happy to answer anything that is controversial, something you may feel is difficult. You feel free to please ask. I would rather you ask than to make your own assumptions. But as I said, I won't engage in a lengthy argument back and forth with you. You're entitled to your opinion, I'm entitled to mine, and that's how we hopefully live together in peace. My focus and expertise is on theology, so religious studies more so than politics or geography. I can comment on some things, but there may be some questions you will ask that I will simply tell you I don't know, or I'm not an expert on that. If we do run out of time, I do have business cards. I'm happy to pass them out. You're free to email me at any time. If in the future you're having a conversation with someone, family member, and a question comes up and you think back to this presentation and you go, I don't think Mona talked about that, and you'd like to ask me, I'm perfectly more than willing to answer your questions. So just talking a little bit about Islam and Muslims, and I'll explain the two terms in a moment. Oftentimes there are certain stereotypes that we think of when we picture a Muslim person, and then there are realities. And in my daily life, I feel like there's a big dichotomy between what people perceive as Muslim looking and who Muslims actually are. In terms of, these are people that I interact with on a daily basis, their family, their friends. And so there's some images here which are a little bit different than maybe some of the images you may have seen in the media. Oftentimes people think of Muslim women as all wearing black or covering their faces. Oftentimes, Muslim men are guys with big scruffy beards, definitely Arab looking, definitely not American, right? So they're sort of exoticized and made to look very foreign and very weird. But these images are a little bit more comfortable to me because they sort of reflect the type of Muslim people I know. You have some young girls on skateboards, you have sports fans out in Detroit, police officer. How many of you guys remember Ibtihaj Muhammad from the Olympic fencing team, the US Olympic fencing team? No one remembers her? Okay, she's right there. And doctors, 10% of doctors in America are actually of the Islamic faith, okay? So just some information about Islam as a religion. Islam is a religion. It's not a political ideology. It's not a philosophy. It's the third in the continuation of the line of Abrahamic faiths. So we believe that Judaism, Christianity, and Islam follow as the three Abrahamic faiths. As for the religion of Islam, what sort of fits into it? There are three primary categories of sciences or learning within the faith. The first is beliefs or theology, like what we actually believe in, our creed. The second is practice or legality, like what's allowed, what's not allowed, what are our good deeds, what are evil deeds. And then the third one is morality. So morality is sort of a continuous process of improving yourself, being a better person. Achieving those personality traits that make you closer to God. So what does the word Islam actually mean, the word Islam? The word is derived from the Arabic word salam. You guys may have heard people say assalamu alaikum. Have you heard that before? It means peace be upon you. The word salam actually means peace, and Islam is a derivative of that word. And in terms of the actual term, the word Islam, it means submission to the will of our Creator or to God. It must be a willing and a peaceful submission, and a Muslim is the person who chooses to submit to God. So the difference here is Islam is the name of the religion, Muslim is the name of the person who follows that religion. So, when Donald Trump said Islam hates us, he was talking about the entire religion, not about the people. So we should just to correct the terminology a little bit. I said that Islam has to be a willing and peaceful submission, and some people challenge me on that, but I'm going to talk to you about our theology, and these are some verses from the Quran that express the freedom of religion, or how important it is that we choose our religion. The first is a verse from the chapter of the cow. Let there be no compulsion in religion. Truth stands out clear from error. Whoever rejects evil and believes in God has grasped the most trustworthy handhold that never breaks, and God hears and knows all things. The second verse is a short chapter called The Disbelievers. And little children, when they're first learning to pray when they're 7 and 8 years old, this is one of the chapters that they first memorize. And in Arabic, it actually kind of rhymes. So it reads as such: Say, O non-believers, I do not worship that which you worship, nor do you worship what I worship, nor do I worship what you worship. For you is your religion, and for me is my religion. And the last verse I'm mentioning here is from the chapter of the cave. It says, and say, the truth is from your Lord, so whosoever wills, let him believe, and whoever wills, let him disbelieve. So these are just 3 verses. There are 6,500 verses in the Quran approximately, and these are just 3 that I'm mentioning. I certainly cannot go into a long dissertation, but Islam is a religion which theologically preaches freedom of religion. Why do we suppose that is? Do you think that God wants us to be forced into any particular thing? He gave us free will, the ability to choose right from wrong. So why would we want to force others or be forced? He wants a willing and a peaceful submission, a submission that is, you are at peace with your decision, and you are at peaceful within yourself, and you are peaceful with the people who are around you. So just talking a bit about who Muslim people are and where they live. This is sort of a map from the Pew Research Center showing where Muslims are concentrated in the world. So you can see that the US is kind of a very, very light green. It kind of comes farther down on the list, and some of the African and Middle Eastern countries are darker green to reflect a higher concentration of Muslim population. Do you guys know what the most populous Muslim country is in the world? Any guesses? Indonesia. You guys are very smart. Indonesia's over here. It's a series of islands. And in fact, Indonesia has the most number of Muslims, but it's not only a Muslim country. There are Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, and many other minority faiths living together peacefully in Indonesia. Does anyone know what the second most populous Muslim country is in the world? Pakistan? No. Close though. India, yes. So India, you'll notice over here, it's not even dark green. Now why is that? huge population, so even a minority in India is a huge number, okay? In fact, I believe there are more Muslims in India than there are in Pakistan, even though Pakistan is a Muslim majority country and India is a Muslim minority country, okay? So numbers are different from percentages. How many Muslims do you think there are in the United States, or what percentage would you guess? One Muslim? 1%. Yes. Sorry. Just trying to lighten the mood. Yes, it's about 1% of Americans. So that's about 3.3 million Muslims in America. What do you guys think, you know, based on what you've seen? Would you say it's about 1%? Do you interact with 1 out of every 100 people you meet are Muslim? You thought it would be more? So you've seen more Muslim people around? It really depends on where you are in the United States. There might be a slightly higher population in New England and in New York, in the northern areas versus maybe Kansas or Arkansas. The numbers might be a little bit lower there, but overall, it's 1%. And obviously Muslims are more concentrated in urban areas. Okay, well, what do we exactly believe? What does the faith of Islam teach us to believe? I said that Islam consists of belief, practice, and morality. So let's talk a little bit about the beliefs. Across all different sects and denominations worldwide, there are 6 key beliefs that all Muslims agree on. One is the belief in God. The second is to believe in the angels. The third is to believe in the prophets. The fourth is to believe in the books. The fifth is to believe in the last day or judgment day. And the last is the supremacy of divine will, or that God's will is supreme over that of man, sometimes called fate or predestination. I don't use those terms because I don't think they're described very accurately what we believe in. So who is Allah? So I've been saying God, right? You've been hearing me say the Creator God, but you've also heard the word Allah. Have you heard this word before? So who is He, and why am I using different terms? Well, the word Allah is actually just the Arabic word for the God, okay? And it consists of 2 different words. In Arabic, the word al actually means the definite article the, the. And the word ilah means something that's awe-inspiring or worthy of worship, or that people worship, with a lowercase g. So you say the God equals like the one God, okay? So when we translate from Arabic to English, this is what we get. In Hebrew, God is El, Eloah. In Aramaic, Allah. Okay, so these are similar Middle Eastern languages. Arabic is another Middle Eastern language, and so you can hear the similarity. Down here I actually have, up here in green, is the Arabic symbol, or the writing of the word Allah in Arabic, okay? And you'll notice, maybe you can't see it from there, but you'll notice that the term is repeated here. This is a website that shows the translation of the Bible into any language. So on the right here you have Genesis in English, and on the left you have Genesis in Arabic, okay? And so you can see wherever the word God is being spoken here, that correspondingly the word Allah is being used in Arabic. And Arab Christians, you know, Christians who live in the Arab world and speak Arabic, they use the word Allah to mean God as well. Now, we don't necessarily agree in the same concept of who God is, but we use the same word. So the word Allah, it doesn't represent a foreign God, it doesn't represent something different other than God itself. The word Allah just means the God. What is our belief about God? We believe that we are worshiping the same God as the Jews and the Christians. And this is a verse from the Quran, from the chapter of the spider. It reads, "Say to the people of the scripture," who do you guys think the people of the scripture might be? The Jews? The Jews and the Christians. Okay, in our belief, the people of the scripture, or the people of the book, are the Jews and Christians, and we differentiate them from the disbelievers. Okay, the people of Scripture are different people. We believe in that which has been revealed to us and that which has been revealed to you. Our God and your God is one, and we are those who are in submission to Him, or Muslims. Okay, so this is our belief. We believe that we are worshiping the same God. What is our concept of God? So we believe we're worshiping the same God, that we call Him by the same name. However, we have a different concept of who He is, okay? So some basic information. We believe He's one, alone, with no partners, associates, children, parents, or divisions. What do I mean by divisions? So we don't believe in the Trinity, okay? There's no Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. He's just one. He has no gender. So we refer to him as he for lack of our language being able to describe something which is free of gender, okay? However, he is not male, he is not female. He's nothing like his creation. So if he doesn't have children, he doesn't reproduce, he doesn't need to have gender, okay? He's nothing like anything that he creates. He actively watches over his creation and he knows every detail. We believe that God knows the number of leaves on every single tree, the number of insects that are crawling in the earth, and that he knows the moment a leaf falls off of the tree. So he actively pays attention. I know that some of the Greek philosophers, Plato and whatnot, they would believe that God created the world and then left it to its own devices. So we kind of don't have that perspective. We have the perspective that he actively cares and watches over his creation. We say that he transcends the bounds of time, matter, and space. Sounds very philosophical or new agey, but really it's very simple. God doesn't need to exist in time because he's eternal. He's absolute. He has no beginning and he has no end. He's always existed and he will always exist. So therefore time is meaningless for God. Time is in a loop, it's in a circle, right? For us, there is a day we are born, there's a day we have a 10th birthday party, there's a day that we die, so our lives are described in terms of years or age, right? Because time is relevant to us. In terms of matter, God does not require matter to exist, he creates matter. So he does not need anything to exist. And he also transcends the boundaries of space. So he's not necessarily above us or below us or to the left of us or to the right of us. He's everywhere at once, okay? He doesn't need directionality or space to exist. There's nothing comparable to him. We can't conceive of something that is like him and understand it. We can only talk about his attributes. He is close to us and he is responsive to our prayers. So he says in the Quran, if my worshipers ask you about me, tell them that I am near and I answer the prayer of the one who calls on me. Okay, so we have this sense that God is near, that he's listening, metaphorically near, not physically near, right? Because I just said he doesn't need space. And we know him through 99 names and attributes that he talks about himself with in the Quran. So some of those names would be the merciful, the compassionate, the creator, okay, the destroyer, the subtle, the aware, the manifest. He has 99 names. I couldn't go over all of them if I had more time maybe. The concept of prophets. So I talked about the concept of God. What is it that we believe about prophets? And you'll notice there's an S on the end of the word. So we obviously believe in more than just one prophet. We believe that there were well over 100,000 prophets that were sent to mankind from the beginning of time until Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came 1400 years ago. All right. Some narrations say there may have been as many as 224,000. The point being is that they were extremely numerous. Okay. So from the chapter of Jonas, the Quran says, and for every nation there is a messenger. From the chapter of the opener, and there is not a people but a warner has gone among them. From the chapter of the forgiver, and indeed we have sent prophets before you, O Muhammad. Some we have related to you their story, and some we have not related to you their story. They are honest, trustworthy, and dutiful in the delivery of the message. They're intelligent and free of intentional sinning, and they are righteous and virtuous people. So we generally believe that the prophets are not capable of doing something evil, and that they are free from sin. So there are 25 prophets mentioned in the Quran. Most of them are also mentioned in the Bible. Okay, these are the English names. There are Arabic names for each of them. You'll notice Adam, Noah. We have the same story of Noah and the flood, Moses and the parting of the Red Sea, Abraham and his sons Isaac and Ishmael. Okay, and we believe that Prophet Muhammad was descended from Ishmael. Okay, and obviously the Jews were descended from Isaac. Okay, so we actually believe that we are the half brothers and sisters of the Jews. Okay, we believe in Jacob, Joseph, Job, Solomon, David, all the same prophets that are mentioned in the Bible. There might be a couple up here that you don't recognize. Any that you don't know or don't look familiar? Enoch? I think Enoch's actually in the Bible. Who? Hud? Shuaib. Okay, so we believe Shuaib was the father-in-law of Moses, and I don't know that there's no biblical equivalent to Hud. He was one of the Arab prophets. So there were some prophets that were sent to Arabia in prehistoric times, and so they were, some of their names are here, Saleh, Hud. Those would be ones maybe you don't recognize. What was the message of all of the prophets? So we believe that all the prophets taught the same exact message. What was it? Moses declared in Deuteronomy, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God." 1,500 years later, Jesus, peace be upon him, mentions the first of all commandments is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord," from Mark. And then the call of Muhammad 600 years later, peace be upon him, "And your God is one God, there is no God but He." This is from the chapter of the cow. So one thing I might have neglected to mention is we obviously also believe that Jesus, we believe He's one of the prophets. Okay, we don't believe that He's a son of God or God Himself, but rather He was one of the prophets and a righteous person. And an interesting fact is that Jesus is actually mentioned in the Quran more often than Prophet Muhammad. Okay? And we did not send any messenger before you, O Muhammad, but that we revealed to him, saying, "None has the right to be worshipped but I, so worship me." And so this is our belief, that all the prophets were teaching the same message of monotheism, that God was one and He alone was worthy of worship. And secondly, that all the prophets taught that there will be a hereafter, meaning there is life after death, that you will be resurrected and you'll be held to account. So we also believe, you'll notice I quoted Deuteronomy and Mark, right? So we also believe in many different holy books. We don't only believe in the Quran, we believe in the Psalms as they were revealed to Prophet David. And we believe that Abraham received some scrolls or some pages of revelation. Torah was revealed to Moses, the Gospel revealed to Jesus, and the Quran to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon all of the prophets. Each of them brought holy word of God and revelation to mankind. We believe that there may be other books that were revealed to mankind, but we can't be sure of them. We don't know about them. Perhaps some of the writings we think are very inspirational were revelation at some point and have been changed. When it comes to the holy books, we believe that all of them are revelations from God and all of them are true. However, when there is a discrepancy, because we believe that the Quran was revealed later, obviously chronologically later, it's the most current and therefore the most authentic. Okay? And therefore, if there's any discrepancy between the holy books, we defer to the Quran. There's a lot of things and stories that are in the Bible that are not in the Quran, and Quranic scholars of exegesis would look to what was in the Bible and what did the Jewish establishment believe, what did Christian scholarship believe about this story. They would look to that as reputable information that they could use to instruct Muslim people about their religion. We believe that there's a day of judgment. So we believe after we die, our souls will remain in the graves hovering over our body until Angel Israfil blows the trumpet. And the world will end, everything will be destroyed, and then human beings will be resurrected from their graves and their bodies will be recreated and their souls will be reunited with a new body. At that point, they will stand in judgment. Judgment by who? By God. So I have here a picture of the scales of justice. It's not really about the court system, but really we believe that all of our deeds are being recorded. So we believe every Muslim has two angels with them, actually every human being of any faith. One on the right, which is writing down every good thing that we do. So every time we help someone, smile at a stranger, give in charity, that angel is writing down our good deed. And one on the left, and every time we tell a lie or cheat or do something wrong, hurt someone, then that angel on the left is writing it down. And each one is collecting a scroll of good deeds and a scroll of evil deeds. On the day of judgment, your scrolls will be weighed against each other, and you obviously want the heavier one to be the good one so that you can go to the good place, right? So we do believe in heaven and hell, and we believe that our deeds will be the thing that will get us one place or the other. We also believe that there is divine grace, that there is forgiveness, that God can intercede for us, and so there are a lot of other paths to heaven even if we're very sinful people, okay? We also believe that God's will reigns supreme over man. So not everything is in our control, right? We can control our choices, we can control whether we do something good or something bad, but certain things are put in our way that sometimes we have no control over, right? So for instance, if a tornado were to come in tomorrow, that would be God's will. There wouldn't be much we could do about it. People get ill and have terminal illnesses. The time that you die, dying in an accident is something that is under God's control. Everything is under God's control, but that He gives us free will, and He's just seeing how we interact with those choices. So these are a couple of memes which I think express the concept well. Some things happen beyond our control. The best thing to do is put it in God's hand and have faith. The other one is you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control your attitude towards what happens to you. And in that, you'll be mastering change rather than allowing it to master you. So these are concepts that kind of have to do with whatever goes on in our lives. If it's bad or if it's good, we'll be thankful for it. We'll be grateful for it. Okay? Because it's a test of our patience, it's a test of our faith, and it's just a fact of life. God is in control of some things, and there is a wisdom for everything He does. Even if it seems unfair or unjust, it's something for us to be testing our faith on. What are the key practices? So we talked about belief. Those are the 6 key beliefs of all Muslims. What are the things we practice? What are the things we physically do? Okay? The first is the shahada, or the testification of faith. So it is to say on the tongue what you believe in your heart. And it is to say, Ashhadu anna la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasuluhu, which means I bear witness or I testify to that there is no God worthy of worship except for the one God. And I bear witness and testify that Muhammad is the prophet and messenger of God, servant and messenger of God. Okay, so to say that, believing it in your heart sincerely, is to become a Muslim. So when a person wants to convert to the faith, they only need to recite this in their language and in Arabic in front of witnesses to become a Muslim. There is no other ceremony or procedure. Muslims pray 5 times a day. We are ordered to pray 5 times a day: before the sun rises, at high noon, in the afternoon, in the early dusk, so when the sun starts setting, and then late at night when the sky turns from blue to black. Okay, so these 5 times are 365 days a year. Okay, there are some exceptions obviously, but we make every effort to pray those 5 times. If we miss a prayer, we make it up as soon as we remember. It is considered a major sin to miss a prayer on purpose. To be forgetful, to fall asleep, okay, you make it up, you're human, right? Fasting we do in the holy month of Ramadan. So we're coming up on the holy month of Ramadan, which is supposed to start, they're saying Saturday. They think they'll be able to sight the moon, the new moon. So Muslims are on a lunar calendar, and so therefore our months don't always line up with the solar calendar, and every year our months shift. So this year we're going to start fasting May 27th. Next year it may be a little earlier, right? So every year those dates will shift. However, it's 30 days that we abstain from food, water, intimacy, and bad language, okay, from sunrise to sunset. So once the sun sets, we feast, we eat, we drink, we relax, okay, and then we start all over again right before the sun rises, okay? We do this for 30 days. The zakat, the mandatory charity. So this is kind of like tithing, except that tithing is typically used to fund the church. However, the zakat is a mandatory charity we have to pay to purify our wealth. Why might we need to purify our wealth? What's wrong with it? Is it dirty? So we're not greedy. Yeah. What else? Anything else? Sometimes there may be some ill-gotten gains, okay, whether we were conscious of it or not conscious of it. So we think of it as doing our duty to the society. We pay 2.5% of our expenses after all, 2.5% of our wealth after expenses are paid, okay? There is also a calculation on crops or business inventory, things like that would also be zakatable or taxable, okay? This money has to go to take care of the needy, so the hungry, the homeless, people who don't have a place to live, people who are in need. It's not used to build institutions, it's not used for anything like that. It has to be used in those particular tasks. The Hajj, how many of you guys have heard of the Hajj or seen it on TV? Yeah, so it's a pilgrimage. It is an obligatory act for every person who is well enough physically and financially can afford to go. You have to do it once in a lifetime. You go to Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and there are a number of rites and rituals that we perform there and prayers. I'll talk a little bit more about it. So the whole world is a mosque. Muslims pray everywhere and anywhere. And if you happen to be out in public and see somebody praying in a park or at a mall or at a strange place, this is not because that person is trying to flaunt themselves or do anything like that. It's actually because we are required to stop and pray when the time for prayer arrives. So when high noon comes in, I have a short window during which I can do my prayers. And if I don't do it on time, it's a sin. So if I'm somewhere out and I don't think I can get to a home or a private place, I have to find a place to pray where I am. And the Prophet Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "The whole earth has been made good for me, a means of purification and a place of prayer. So wherever a man or woman may be, when the time for prayer comes, let him or her pray wherever he or she is." These are pictures of people praying in sort of odd places, just to kind of give you the idea. You have some people on an airplane. I don't think that today they would be able to do this, probably an older picture, just for security reasons. People praying outside the Colosseum, on the back of a taxi cab, up in the North Pole, on top of a rock at the International Space Station, and underwater. So people will pray wherever they are, whenever they have to. These are particularly odd places to pray, but people will pray at the time. And this is a picture of the Hajj. Yes? Yeah, it's particularly difficult on the airplane. There are some accommodations we can do. So on a long travel, we can actually combine some of our prayers together or shorten some of them, depending on the school of thought that you follow. However, eventually you will end up having to pray. Nowadays, I think most people will pray in their seat, because there just isn't as much room, and also for security reasons they usually don't let people just take up the walkway. Also, people, we're not supposed to have anyone pass in front of us when we're praying, so it's kind of difficult if you get up and other people need to move around. Planes are much tighter than they used to be. So yeah, most people would pray in their seat where they are. Yeah, it's also hard to calculate the direction. So we pray towards Mecca. So if I had to pray right here and now, I'd take out my phone app that has a compass and I'd calculate east, northeast from where I am, and I'd be like, okay, it's this way, right? I don't know if it's actually that way, but I would calculate the direction and I would pray it in that direction if I had to. When you're on a plane, you're moving. And you're moving at a high rate of speed. So calculating the shortest distance between your spot and Mecca is actually almost impossible. So the direction is sort of a little bit less important at that point in time. Yeah. This is a picture of the Hajj. For those of you who haven't seen it before, there's approximately 3 to 4 million people that descend on Mecca every year. There's a short period of time, 10 days to 2 weeks, that people go. They usually first report to Mecca, although some people go to Medina to visit the Prophet's mosque. But this is considered the holiest spot on earth for Muslims. We believe that Abraham built this mosque. See that little black square in the middle? We call that the Kaaba, which is just Arabic for the cube. Okay, and it's not actually black, it's made out of cement blocks, but they cover it with this beautiful black velvet covering that's covered in gold embroidery out of love and respect for it. But we believe that Abraham built it with his son, Ishmael, and so it's a very holy spot for us. We actually believe that there are 2 mountains, you actually can't see them here, there are 2 mountains called Safa and Marwa, and we believe that Hagar, Abraham's wife, ran with baby Ishmael from mountain to mountain looking for water, looking for help, looking for civilization. And that's one of the rituals we perform when we're at the Hajj. So we actually run back and forth between those 2 mountains trying to remember her feelings at that time. People go around the Kaaba 7 times. It's actually very difficult, it takes a long time because there's literally millions of people trying to do the same thing. You can actually do it way up here on the upper decks, which is easier but longer. Okay, and people come down here, they try to get their hands on it. There's a black stone we believe fell from heaven. It's mounted on the Kaaba. It's mounted on there, and people try to get a chance to touch it. So yeah, this is what it looks like. You can see all the tall buildings in the background. We talked about belief, practices, and now we're going to talk about moral values or morality, personality characteristics, the ideal personality of a Muslim. So these are things that we are striving to achieve on a daily basis. The first one and most important is sincerity, being that we do things for the sake of pleasing God, not for wealth, not for fame, not because we want everyone to think we're wonderful, devout people, but because we want God to be pleased with us. Truthfulness and honesty, trustworthiness and keeping promises and commitments, being moderate, being thrifty. You guys know what being thrifty is? Sometimes when I have younger audiences, they're like, what's thrift? I'm like, never heard of a thrift store? Basically thrift, not being extravagant, right? Modesty, so modesty in not only dress, but in speech, in attitude, in approach to others. Generosity and hospitality. If you ever visit a Muslim person's house, they just won't let you leave without feeding you something or giving you something to drink, because it's part of our faith. We're encouraged to be very hospitable. Seeking knowledge is considered really important. Brotherhood, a sense of humanity, doing something to make the earth a better place. a sense of patience and perseverance at hardship whenever hardship strikes us, mercy and kindness to one another, tolerance or forgiveness, good speech and good etiquette, and then freeing the heart of things like hate, jealousy, and anger. We think that those emotions are gateways to sin. So most likely if you get angry or jealous, that's when you might become violent, or when you might say something you don't mean to say, right? And so by freeing the heart of those emotions on a constant basis, we set ourselves up for success. These are just some of our moral values. Most of these are documented in the Quran as things that we are supposed to strive for, or they're in the prophetic traditions. So those are the three main categories. Now I put the next series of slides are really just things that people always ask about. So the first thing people always ask about is, why do you wear that? Why do you dress like that? Why do Muslim women cover up? So first of all, I mentioned modesty as one of our moral values. It's not only for women. Modest dress and approach and speech and manner of walking are prescribed for both men and women, okay? So I have men there too. But just in terms of the way that we dress according to how we believe God ordained for us to dress. The Quran has 2 different verses which mention to us to cover over our bodies in a particular way. Okay? It is somewhat vague, which is why you will see different Muslim women practicing modesty differently. So I wear a blazer and a skirt. Other women wear a loose black gown. Some women feel they need to cover their faces. Other women are much more liberal. You'll find some Muslim women don't cover themselves at all. They just wear regular clothing that, any one of you, how you might be dressed. So you'll see that different women express their modesty in different ways. It is generally thought that the covering of the head is a requirement. However, not every woman feels confident enough to do it, or is forced to do it. Every single person is asked to comply with God's commands to the extent that they are able, and they are only accountable to God. So we don't have like the hijab police that comes after people and beats them up if they don't listen or they don't dress a certain way. That's not part of our faith, and there are no punitive punishments mentioned in the Quran for people who don't dress a certain way. It's something that's between an individual and their Lord. I have pictures of people of other faiths that look similar to Muslim dress, such as Orthodox Jews who do cover in the same way. Even conservative Jews tend to have some kind of tekel or head covering, or they wear a wig. Catholic nuns and nuns of all different types do wear the habit, and that kind of looks sort of similar to how we dress. I also have a couple of my heroines over here. Mary, the Virgin Mary, is someone who's a very highly revered personality in Islamic belief, and she has a whole chapter devoted to her in the Quran. And we look at her as the example of chastity and devotion and commitment to God. And so we look at how she's typically depicted, and she's typically depicted wearing very long, loose, moderate clothes, most often with something over her head. And so we think of her, in a sense, as an example for us of how to behave and how to interact with others. Mother Teresa is one of my personal heroines, and you can see that different people of the cloth have taken this kind of attire. Men, again, also have to dress modestly. Their requirements are a little different because the physique of the male, physique of the female are a little bit different, obviously. And so they are required to wear loose, moderate clothing. They're not supposed to wear tight, skinny jeans or anything that's transparent or shows those things that we kind of wish that they wouldn't when we go out and see how people dress. So, they are also expected to dress and act modestly towards the opposite gender and towards everyone in general. These are pictures of women that I think defy stereotypes. So oftentimes, when the hijab is talked about or when women's attire is talked about, it's most often depicted as a very horrible, oppressive, barbaric sort of images that we see in the media. But these images feel a little bit more to me like what I'm used to experiencing when it comes to the way we dress. The hijab does not have to prevent people from pursuing their careers, their education, their hobbies. There are many Muslim women athletes all around the world who do participate in sports while they are completely covered, and they do that by choice. So some general misconceptions about women in Islam. I had to add this because people oftentimes mention these to me. So one is that women are not allowed to drive. I drove to get here. Women are only not allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia. There are 50 Muslim majority countries, and another couple of dozen where there's a large Muslim minority in the world. and there's one country that put a law on the books saying that women shouldn't drive. It's not part of our religion. Women used to ride camels at the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. They used to ride horses. So there's no religious restriction on women driving a car. Women are not allowed to be educated. So when Malala wrote her book about her personal story, what she went through and being shot in Afghanistan by the Taliban, many people developed this idea that women are not allowed to be educated or discouraged from education in Islam. This is contrary to the truth. In fact, women as well as men are ordered. Seeking knowledge is obligatory on every Muslim. This is a statement of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So women are encouraged and ordered to educate themselves as much as possible, and they're in no way, shape, or form religiously banned from education. Yes, the Taliban obviously did not want women to go to school, but again, that's an example of when you have a single, country or a single incidence of something sort of defining what we think about an entire faith. Women are not allowed to work. This is also not correct. The first wife of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Khadija, she was a wealthy businesswoman. She worked. Many women in the time of Prophet Muhammad worked, and so we don't have any restriction on women working. And in fact, you'll meet many Muslim women in the workforce. Almost all of my good friends who are women have full-time jobs and families. Women are allowed not only to work, but they are allowed to keep all their own earnings, and they're not required to spend on their household expenses or on their children. If they choose to do that, that is regarded as charity. Okay. However, they're not required to. Women are punished, jailed, and beaten if not covered up. Again, there are only 2 countries where there's any type of government intervention in people's attire, and those would be Iran and Saudi Arabia. And even then, it is restricted to certain areas or parts of the city where there is a police presence that actually pays attention to how women might be dressed, a morality police or something like that. This is a minority. Generally speaking, people dress how they want. My mother has never worn a head covering, and she grew up in Egypt. And nobody ever said anything to her. In fact, most of her peers and kids that she went to school with never did. And so this concept that we're developing that, it's this evil, oppressive attire that, you get punished for not doing, it's really just a story that we're being told to demonize the religion and the people who choose to practice it. Yes, are some women under social pressure to dress a certain way? Definitely. But I would liken that to, I remember when I was growing up, and I grew up right here. Some of my friends, I remember in the 80s, it came into fashion to wear these really cut up jean shorts or cutoffs, right? And I remember all of my friends getting upset because their mothers and fathers wouldn't let them go out wearing it. They felt it was indecent. So yes, there is social pressure. The hijab is considered the gold standard in most Middle Eastern and Muslim, majority countries. And so yes, family members will want their daughters or their, wives or whoever to dress in a certain way because they consider it the most proper. But again, that's more of a social thing than it is a religious thing. Women are considered less than men. This is just not true. Obviously, there are some images, there is some behavior which makes people believe that, but the Quran tells us that whoever does good, whether male or female, God promises them a happy life in this life and in the next. There are many verses of the Quran which address men and women equally and call out women as recipients of the same reward or potentially punishment. Women cannot be experts or leaders in faith. Like the Catholic Church, a woman doesn't lead a mixed congregation, but we have an imam that can be a prayer leader that can lead a group of women. We have women scholars, we have women authors, we have women experts in all different areas of faith. So it's really just a matter of when you're practicing the actual ritualized prayer on Friday, at that point in time women don't lead the congregation. Women cannot hold political leadership. This is also not true. I have a whole list in my backup slides of Muslim women who are political leaders today, either in Congress, in Parliament, prime ministers, former prime ministers. There's a whole long list of them. So this is just simply not true as well. Now I wanted to reserve, there's no clock, but I wanted to reserve at least a good amount of time for any of your questions. I do have more slides because I typically get the same questions all the time, but please feel free to ask anything that you're curious about, anything you've wondered about, and don't feel like you can't ask. It actually takes quite a lot to offend me, so you can feel free to ask me whatever you like. Yes?
I think it was early on in your slides, I think, Ben, going through the tenets of faith, it mentioned jinns.
Oh yeah. So we believe that all the prophets were sent to man and jinn kind. So Muslims believe that there are two creations that have free will. Jinns and human beings. You guys have heard of the genie in the bottle? Genie. The word genie comes from jinn, okay? The singular of jinn is jinni. That's one. Jinn is plural for like the whole race, okay? So we believe there are different races within the jinn. They live on the earth with us, but we do not see them, okay? They do operate in our world. They live in remote areas. Sometimes we believe that, when you find a haunted house or you see or hear something unexplained, we believe that's because of the jinn, okay, that are living there. They are made from fire. We believe that mankind is made from clay and jinns were made from fire. We believe that they can fly, they're very fast, they're very strong. I'm trying to think of what other information you might need to know. Some of the jinns are Christians, some are Muslims, some are atheists, They're just like human beings, they have their own civilization, except for the fact that some of the jinn are demons, so they follow Satan. Okay, so we also believe that there are demons, jinns who have pledged themselves to Satan, and they help Satan in his cause to dissuade people from faith and doing good deeds. Okay.
You also mentioned angels.
Angels, yes, we believe in angels, but we don't believe that angels have free will. So we believe that God created angels from light, but they have no choice but to obey God, and they only do things with God's permission. So one of the key differences between Islam and Christianity here is that I believe that it's a Christian belief that Satan is a fallen angel. So we don't have that concept. We believe that Satan was a jinn, and he disobeyed God, and so God punished him. But the angels are not capable of sinning or disobedience. They can only do what they're told. And they have different tasks. They have different duties. There are the angels that write down our deeds. There are the angels that bring us sustenance. There are the angels that bring revelation, so like Gabriel, peace be upon him. So we believe in angel Michael. So we have very similar, we call him Mikael, but Michael. So we have very similar beliefs about angels, except for that we don't believe they have free will. Does that answer your question? Yeah, any other questions? Yes?
I'm curious about what the concept of forgiveness among people is, like whether God can forgive you for something you've done to someone else, or do you have to go to that person and...
Yeah. So first of all, we're encouraged to forgive one another as much as possible, because the Quran says, do you not want God to forgive you? So because it is a godly thing to forgive, we are encouraged to forgive one another. However, we do also have the concept that God forgives every sin, except that you associate partners with him. You associate false gods with him. Other than that, he can and will forgive every single sin. However, in the case that you wrong another human being, you do need to seek their forgiveness. Because God will, that's an offense to a fellow man, right? So you need that person to forgive you. Yeah. So we do have that concept. Yes?
So I've heard of like a type of law that's Islam.
Mm-hmm. So you might be asking about Sharia law? Okay, so Sharia law is basically like Islamic canonical law. So we have laws that are based on verses of the Quran. The Quran is mostly a book about spirituality and beliefs, and there's very little of it. Less than 10% of the book is actually do's and don'ts and rules and regulations. But there are some laws that are ordained in the Quran. The word Sharia refers to a waterway that leads to a main source. That's sort of the general meaning of the word. The word in Arabic for street is shara'. So you can hear that they're very similar words. It's a path, right? It's divine directives regarding every aspect of our life. So how I have to wash up before I pray is part of Sharia law. Fasting during Ramadan, that's part of Sharia law. Everything that I'm required to do or forbidden from doing is part of Sharia law. It is not limited to just a penal system. So oftentimes when people think about Sharia law, they think about punishments that are imposed. So it's a full body of divine laws, code of conduct, and teachings which are supposed to benefit both the individual and the society. It covers worship, social behavior, business transactions, marriage and divorce, inheritance, politics, economics, and penal laws. Okay? So that's what it consists of. Islam does not really differentiate between modern and secular time and historic times. And we don't really have a concept of secular. Everything is encompassed in our faith, okay? It's a complete way of life. It's very hard for us to say, oh wait, this is a religious law versus this is secular law, okay? How and where does Sharia apply? A lot of times people are very afraid of Sharia law. There's actually a $40 million industry, Islamophobia industry in the United States that is just targeted at making people afraid of Muslims and Islam. And one of the messages that they're always perpetrating is that Sharia law is coming to America, or you may have heard the term creeping Sharia, okay? So for instance, like, they have a problem with halal meat. We have dietary restrictions, just like Jews have kosher, we have halal. And they have a problem with, halal turkeys being sold on Thanksgiving. This is just, something to make people feel alarmed and scared. It's just how we choose to treat the animal. And it's about treating the animal humanely. It's about sacrificing the animal in the name of God. That's really all it's about. But anyway, the Sharia must be applied in a legitimate Islamic state, okay? It's not something that gets applied in a non-Islamic state. So last I checked, America was not an Islamic state. ISIS is not an Islamic state. I'll get into that why, but I have to mention it since they call themselves an Islamic state. Even within an Islamic state, the non-Muslim minority is not subject to those laws. The evidence for this is that when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the leader of the city of Medina, there were Jews living amongst his people. And when they came forward with a dispute, he adjudicated their dispute according to Jewish rabbinical law at the time. He did not adjudicate them according to Islamic law. So the non-Muslim minority is never subject to the same laws, even if we were in an Islamic state. Freedom of religious practice is protected within Islam and in the Islamist state. And when not living in an Islamic state, Muslims are required by the Sharia to obey the laws of the land. Why is this? Because we believe that when you enter a foreign country, you are making a de facto contract with that country to obey its laws, okay? So if you were to go to another country like, is it Vietnam or Thailand? One of these countries where, using drug trafficking is a capital offense. Right? So I remember being in an airport once and there was a sign saying, warning to American citizens, drug trafficking is a capital offense and, your embassy can't help you, basically. So when you go to a foreign country, you know that they have their own laws and you have to obey them. So when you enter it, you've made an agreement to obey those laws or else face the consequences, right? So when not living in our own Islamic states, we are required to follow the laws. And in fact, it's considered part of our own Sharia that we have to obey the laws of the place we are living in. So I said that ISIS wasn't an Islamic state, and I said that only Islamic law or Sharia law can apply in an Islamic state. What are the conditions of an Islamic state? Why is ISIS not considered an Islamic state, even though they call themselves that, right? The first one is diplomacy. So the country has to have diplomatic acknowledgement. There are no embassies to ISIS, right? Nobody else acknowledges them as a nation. There has to be security or secure authority. They have to be able to keep their country under control. Well, their borders are moving, they're constantly at war, they're constantly gaining and losing ground, right? So they're not a secure state. They have to be thought of as an Islamic state with consensus of other nations, and other Muslim nations have to say, yep, that's an Islamic state, or leaders or scholars. Your people have to accept you as a righteous leader. So the Caliph of the Islamic State, as he calls himself, his people didn't nominate him. They didn't pledge him. They didn't say, we agree that you're our leader. Okay, so he doesn't qualify for an Islamic state. Adherence to Islamic principles and the application of Sharia law. So for instance, ISIS burns people, right? They behead people, they mutilate people. These are all prohibited in Islamic law. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said treachery is forbidden. All warfare has to be open and declared. He said not to mutilate dead bodies. Okay, he said no one punishes with fire except for the Lord of the fire. What does that mean? That means only God can punish in hellfire. People should not punish one another with fire, right? So these are parts of Islamic law that they are not adhering to. Therefore, they cannot claim to be an Islamic state. So if I just say, my house in West Boylston is Mona Land, and that's my country, that's exactly what they've done. They've basically said, we are a state, okay, and we are an Islamic state, but nobody else acknowledges them and they don't fit the criteria of being a state, okay? That being said, I'll mention within the Islamic state, so ideally within a Muslim country or within an Islamic state, these are the rights of those who are minorities or who don't ascribe to the same faith. So Prophet Muhammad said, beware, whoever is cruel and hard to a non-Muslim minority, curtails their rights or burdens them with more than they can bear, or takes anything from them against their free will, I, Prophet Muhammad, will complain against that person on the day of judgment. So it's regarded as a serious sin, as a serious infraction, and something that should not be done. The second is a letter to the Christians of Najran. There's a neighboring nation, written by the first caliph after the Prophet, peace be upon him, passed away. His name is Abu Bakr. And it says, in the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful, this is the written statement of God's slave Abu Bakr, the successor of Muhammad, the Prophet and Messenger of God. He affirms for you the rights of a protected neighbor in yourselves, your lands, your religious community, your wealth, retainers and servants, those of who you are present or abroad, your bishops and monks, your monasteries, and all that you own, be it great or small. You shall not be deprived of it and shall have full control over it. So the authentic Islam, mainstream Islam, is a religion and a perspective that respected the rights of those who did not follow the same faith and who treated even neighboring states as safe from harm. Okay, so this is what our religion teaches us. This is what Sharia law teaches us. Okay, did I answer? I know someone asked me a simple question about Islamic law, and I gave you a dissertation. But did I answer your question? Okay, you have a question?
I follow up.
Yep.
Are all Muslim majority countries considered Islamic states?
No, in fact, what could be considered an Islamic state, there's virtually no consensus over that. Most Muslim majority countries are not really considered Islamic states, and in fact many of themselves call themselves democratic republics, and they have different system of governance. So to differing degrees, they may or may not have Islamic laws on the books. They may just have, secular laws. So it depends on the country. But generally speaking, if you ask most Muslims, is there an Islamic state? Most of them will be like, oh no. If anything, maybe you could look at a country like Saudi Arabia as supposedly an Islamic state, with the exception that their leadership is a monarchy, which is not really what we agree with. So they're not really necessarily all fitting all the criteria. To differing degrees, they represent Islamicness. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Yeah, you have another follow-up?
I have another.
Yep.
It's a different subject.
Go ahead.
Are Sunni and Shia the two major sects?
Yeah.
Can you talk about
Sure.
what characterizes them?
Yep. So who are the Sunni and who are the Shia? The two main denominations of Muslims in the world are Sunni and Shia. Shia represent only maybe 10 to 50% of Muslims in the world. The only countries that have a majority of Shia would be like Iran, and it comes close in Iraq. Okay. However, the rest of the Muslim countries in the world have a Sunni majority. Primarily, the difference between Sunnis and Shias is political, not really theological. We pray the same, we fast the same, we believe in the same books, the same prophet, okay? The difference between the two sects emerged at the time of the death of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And at the time when he was passing away, the discrepancy became who will follow him in leadership, okay? So the Shia position on leadership was it should remain with the bloodline of Prophet Muhammad. So they wanted Ali, his cousin, to take leadership. The Sunni position was it should remain with the most virtuous or qualified people who have the endorsement of the people. And so therefore, it is the Sunni belief that Abu Bakr was the person who the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, asked to lead prayers when he was on his deathbed, and so he was the most virtuous or the most qualified, okay? So therefore they followed that line. There are other things. For instance, there's a leadership structure difference. The Shia have the imamate and the Sunni have the caliphate. They're kind of just a difference in name. However, within the Shia sect, there are 12ers and 7ers. So the 12ers believe there were 12 imams after Prophet Muhammad, and the 7ers believe there are 7. And both sects believe that one of the imams is missing and is going to come back at the end of time. Okay, the caliphate, we basically believe that the people nominate who they believe is the most qualified, most virtuous person to follow, and the word caliph means the one who follows in the footsteps of somebody else. So that person is trying their best to follow in the footsteps of Prophet Muhammad. Both sects have a very high level of respect for the family of the Prophet, although the Shia tend to claim that that's their domain, that they love the bloodline of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Shia believe that the people who were caliphs before Ali were usurpers. So they did not have the right, and everything they did is suspect. However, the Sunni believe that all of the caliphs after the Prophet Muhammad, the 4 caliphs, were righteously guided people. and as was Ali, the fourth of them. So they sort of don't like anybody who came before Ali. The tragedy of Karbala. So this is later on, several generations later, the grandchildren of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Hassan and Hussein, they were very tragically slaughtered by the caliphate. Okay, and so some Shias really, they celebrate this day, or they commemorate this day with a lot of mourning. Okay, and so some of them self-harm. So they do like self-flagellation. You may have seen pictures where they will hit themselves with chains, or they will cut themselves and bleed themselves. Sunnis basically regard this as a major tragedy, and they do mourn the loss. However, they do believe that this is incorrect to commit self-harm. And then within the schools of jurisprudence, so we have schools of jurisprudence or schools of thought around Islamic law. There are 4 accepted schools of thought. The Shias have only a couple of their own, and they differ a little bit in terms of how to practice the laws. I guess that's the best overview summary I can give you. I hope I answered your question.
What's the breakdown in the US?
It's the same. I would say less than 10% of Muslims you're going to meet in the US are Shia. In Massachusetts, there are approximately 200 mosques, and I believe only 2 or 3 are Shia. Okay, so it kind of gives you the 10% ratio, right? Any other questions?
How do Muslims justify whether you're Sharia or Sunni? There seems to be a lot of mutual animosity that has led to a lot of killing.
Yeah, well, it's not really justified. It's forbidden to harm anyone who isn't fighting you actively, except in self-defense or to liberate and oppress people. It's forbidden to fight another person. And it's even more of a sin to kill, your own brother in faith. So the conflicts between Shia and Sunni, as I mentioned, they're mostly political, and they're mostly people vying for power in the region. It's mostly people looking for representation in government where, there is a lot of political upheaval. So right now in Iraq, for instance, the government is all in shambles, and the Shias are looking for more representation or domination. So it's really not a religious fight. It's really more of a political fight. So how do we justify it? We don't justify it. It's not justified. It's something we abhor. Hopefully that answers your question. Do you guys have any other questions? Yes?
The role of the Crusades, was that when discord started, or after the Crusades did they heal?
That's kind of a good question. I'm not sure if I'm the best person to answer that question. I mean, the Crusades is obviously the beginning of Christian-Muslim discord, because there was a lot of Christian-Muslim cooperation, good relations. Yeah, and even in Jerusalem today, I mean, all the traditions are there. People pray at the temple, people pray at the mosque at Aqsa, people pray at the Wailing Wall. We really don't have a sense that we have to have hatred to people of other faiths. But the Crusades was sort of the initial, I would say, in history, one of the earliest sort of outright battles between faiths. And it was looked at as, we need to cleanse the Holy Land of the Muslims. And so therefore the Muslims who were there were defending their place. So yeah, I would say probably, but I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I'm not really a historian, so I could just tell you that it's one of the things that a lot of Muslims, when they're, they have some animosity, they go back to the Crusades. They wanted to kill us all, they still want to kill us all, they don't want us to exist. So this is a common thinking that you'll see in, when there's hatred, people have to justify hatred against an enemy, and so they'll always go back to.
The Jews killed Jesus.
Yes, just like the Jews killed Jesus, yeah. So yeah, so Muslims actually don't believe that Jesus was crucified, so we don't believe that the Jews killed Jesus, but we believe that they wanted to, and that they killed other prophets. So, but we don't have animosity towards the Jews because of anything like that. There's no religious animosity towards the Jews. What you see is sometimes Muslim-Jewish animosity comes from political conflicts like the Israel-Palestine problem. Again, it comes down to history and politics more so than theology. Okay? Do you guys have any other questions? I'm sorry I didn't answer that very well, but yeah.
It's also another historical question.
Yeah.
My understanding was that the first translation into the English language was a very biased translation. So what type of translation would be What would a good translation be?
So earlier translations of the Quran were done by Orientalists, and most of the Orientalists were particularly committed to basically disproving Islam as a faith. So obviously they translated the book with some slant. But the Quran has been translated into every language on earth. A lot of the modern translations you can find today are pretty good. So Yusuf Ali is a really good one. Marmaduke Pickthall. Yeah, I can email you some names, but most of them are pretty decent. The thing about the Quran is we only believe it's the word of God in Arabic, and it needs to be understood in Arabic, and that's why Muslim children, when they're young, they start learning the Arabic language, even if they're not Arabic speaking. Okay, because we are taught that we have to learn our book and recite it in our own language and understand it in our own language. There's so much that's lost in translation. The Arabic language is very rich and it's very hard to translate. I find it difficult sometimes when I'm trying to translate things. One book that you might want to look at, it's called the Study Quran. It's sort of a book of exegesis and it's a bit sophisticated, but if you're somebody who's studious, you might find some benefit in that book. It's also very controversial in the Muslim community. Some people love it, some people hate it. But most of the more common translations that you will see, Karen Armstrong is a great person. John Esposito has written a lot of really good books on Islam, and they're both not Muslim. Yeah. So I would say Yusuf Ali is one of the best, and secondly, yeah, I am personally. I mean, not every word is perfect, but as an overall translation, I would say it's one of the better ones. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
Have any of the Muslim communities in Massachusetts been targeted by any of the sort of recent hostile political things?
You mean as recent as like yesterday, or you mean just in general?
Past couple of years.
Yeah, so I know that there have been some hate crimes. There's been an increase in hate crimes over the last couple of years, since 2014, against mosques and against Muslim people. You know, I'm sure that that's also the case in Massachusetts. There's a group called the Muslim Justice League that basically does like pro bono and representation for Muslims who've been targeted. So yes, there has been. You know, more likely than not, what you see is just stuff that you might consider microaggression, stuff that doesn't get reported. You know, people just yelling out their window, "Go back to your country," or just saying rude things to you, or, you know, vandalism, things like that. There was a mosque break-in attempt at the Worcester Islamic Center. It was a mentally disturbed individual. So, you know, there has been definitely some targeting, but nationwide there's a very clear trend upwards towards hate against Muslims. Yeah, for sure. In Massachusetts, you know, there are a few spot severe cases, hate crimes that have happened. I can't tell you the details of them. I know that, you know, if you search news articles, you will find them. But if you want to follow up, I'll have somebody who works on cases send you some information if you want. Okay? Yes?
Mine is sort of associated with that. How do we show support for the Muslim community, which is, I mean, face a lot of discrimination? And those of us who don't want to bridge that gap, how do we do that?
I would say, you know, oftentimes it's really simple things. You know, I would say the first step is probably trying to get to know someone Muslim in your community, if there is anyone that you don't know, and just reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'm your neighbor, I live in town, and if you ever need anything, you know, give me a call," or "Hey, let's be friends, let's get coffee, let's get lunch." Because I think that's one of the hardest things. We are only 1% of the population, so only 1 in 100 people is Muslim, and it's very hard to you know, be known as human beings and not be known as a stereotype or what happens on TV. When you get to know someone for, hey, their kids are in school and they do this job, and, you know, it's a lot easier to reconcile you know, a very small minority of people that do barbaric things with the vast majority of, you know, 1.6 billion people on the earth. So I would say that's the first step. The second step would be, you know, when you see or hear of something discriminatory, you know, just don't be afraid to speak up and be brave. I remember that earlier in the year there was an incident where, and this wasn't a Muslim person, there was a Hispanic woman at JCPenney, and she was standing in line. And you may have seen videos online if you're on social media, but this person in line behind her was just insulting her, telling her to go back to her country, telling her she was using all the tax dollars, you know, and just went on a rant. And everybody in the line at JCPenney was just quietly waiting. Nobody said anything. I think that's one of the hardest and bravest things to do, is to speak up and say, you know what, that's not cool, you shouldn't talk like that. You know, she has just as much right to buy her goods at Target as you do, or JCPenney or whatever. I would say that, you know, that's one of the hardest things to do, but one of the most needed things is when someone will stand up when something is going on. Sometimes it's just someone yelling at you. It doesn't become a police incident, you know, but it becomes that person feels scared and then doesn't want to go out for weeks because, oh, what if this happens to me again? So expressing solidarity just through personal relationships, or if at your workplace you can help someone who's Muslim, you know, we're going to be fasting for 30 days. So if you work with someone Muslim, you know, kind of try to be a little bit understanding of the fact that they're hungry and tired and probably haven't slept enough. You know, help them advocate with their employer or their school, depending on your position. You know, if you work somewhere where you can make a difference, then that's really important. And I would just say be aware, you know, and spread information. So if you, like if I share with you some information about Muslims condemning terrorism, so let me find something here. So this just happened the other day, right? You know, that there was an attack in Manchester. So of course the first thing I get to see on my social media is, Muslims don't do enough to prevent this, they don't condemn this. And of course I just quickly Googled and found all Muslims condemning terrorism and acts of terror and providing solidarity for the victims. And so sometimes it's just that people hear negative things and they don't hear positive things. So say the positive things too, be fair, right? So if you can help by just promoting information, telling people what good resources they can read, telling people what misconceptions are out there. You've learned what some misconceptions are out there today, tell people what you know. So I would say those are probably some of the best ways to show solidarity. There will obviously be other opportunities as things happen. We had, as I said, a break-in attempt at the mosque, and there's a group called in Worcester called Showing Up for Racial Justice. It's called SURGE. They got together, they came to the mosque on a Friday, and they just stood out there with signs saying, you know, we support our Muslim neighbors, just as people were driving by on the street and they could see the signs. And that says something important to us. And when people pulled up to pray, they first were like, oh no, people are protesting us. You know, then they got close and they saw the signs and they said, you know, we support you. And they were really comforted and they felt really good that, you know, their neighbors did support them. So I think there's a lot of different ways, and there's creativity that you can, you know, kind of come up with on your own, but I hope that answers your question. Yeah, any other questions?
It sounds to me like there's so much more similarities than there is differences.
Yeah, there is much more in common, especially between the Abrahamic faiths, so Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I mean, the differences are really minute compared to all that we have in common and all that we believe in. So that's just something else you can let people know. The other thing is I do go to churches, I go to temples, I go to whoever invites me. I'm happy if you think that there's a congregation or a group or an employer or someone who would be interested in learning more and would like to sit through a presentation like this. I'm happy to do it, and I don't charge anything, so it's something that you can let me know and we can organize. Yep.
How do your kids go all day without eating?
We don't, so religious obligations are not required of children until they reach the age of puberty. So generally speaking, sometimes young kids will want to practice or fast half a day, or want to do what mom and dad are doing. So some, depending on the age and the health of that child, different families do different things to kind of train their children. So I didn't start trying to fast till I was 12 or 13. It didn't become required on me till I was a little bit older than that. As for, there are some kids that do it younger, or they do a half day, or they only do it when they have the day off. And they generally, the parents will decide if it's right for their children. We do start training children as young as 7 or 6 to pray 5 times a day. You can imagine if they suddenly had to pray 5 times a day when they turn 15, that would be very challenging, right? So if they don't have the habit and they haven't learned how to do it at a young age, it's going to be really tough. So we do try to encourage children at different levels from a young age to practice their worships, so that when they reach the age, they kind of already have the habits down pat. Yeah, so, but it's not required. Yes?
Are there any coming of age,
rituals? Yeah, so not we don't have a bat mitzvah, or we don't have communion, or we don't have a particular time. It's a private family thing when a person reaches puberty. So we don't have a particular ritual. We do have rituals when a person has a child. So we have something called an akika, which is a celebration of the birth of the child. We give charity by sacrificing an animal. for that child, and we feed other people with the animal, and we have a party and we invite people and stuff like that. So we thank God for the blessing of the child, and that's usually done within the first week or two of the birth, or at least within the first couple of years. But we don't have like a, oh, you've reached the age kind of party. We kind of regard it as very private, so we don't publicize it. The only difference you might notice is that person now starts showing up to prayers all the time. That person is now fasting all the time, and people can generally tell when someone reaches that age. Yeah, so no, we don't have a ritual. Any other questions? Yes? You mean preaching or proselytizing? So it's considered a communal obligation, which means that not every individual is required to proselytize or to preach. However, the entire Muslim community in the world has to make sure that accurate and true information can be found about the religion, that they publish books, that they make themselves available to answer questions, that they are going out there and talking to people who don't know about God. So there are groups of people who do it. They go to villages, they go to remote areas, and they talk to people about God. Definitely it is something that is considered an obligation, but not something that is an obligation on every person. So there's a select group of people who specialize in doing that, and who are good at it and have sort of attained the skills at doing it well, and they do try to make it an effort. Nowadays it's mostly like publishing pamphlets, and we don't go door to door and like knock on people's doors and ask them about God, So it just depends on where you are in different organizations and their tactics and the things that they do to try to promote or teach people about religion. I find that what I do is a sort of preaching, although I'm not really trying to convert anybody to my faith. I'm really just trying to win hearts and minds and make people sort of know who Muslims really are as a people. And so you could consider that a type of preaching as well, although the goal isn't necessarily conversion. It's just about information delivery. Okay? Any other questions? Did I answer that? Did you get that? I know I was kind of all over you understood? Okay. Any other questions? I don't know how much time I have left, but if you have anything else, please raise your hand, or I can give you a business card or see you afterwards.
About 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 more minutes, so feel free if you have any questions. Yes?
I'm wondering if you feel that, this is a kind of hard question to phrase, but like Christianity is sort of, some people believe, is sort of evolving, like some of the interpretations have changed and are reapplied in the modern world.
Mm-hmm.
Some people feel that those things need to be returned to the olden days. I'm just wondering if you have some of that.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So you're asking about reform or change in the faith. So generally speaking, in Islam, the mainstream ideology about reform is that the more authentic it is, the older it is. So the closer it is to the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's lifetime, the more accurate, the more authentic, the more correct it is, the closer it is to what God wants from us. So in one sense, we are sort of a fundamentalist faith in the sense that we go back to the origins and the sources. And that's why when I was talking to you about my theology, I was going back to verses of the Quran or statements of the Prophet, peace be upon him, as opposed to, modern ideology about this topic or that topic. That being said, there is obviously some room for modernization, and there is obviously some room for interpretation. For instance, modern scientific, developments. So one of the things that modern scholars have debated in recent times are, is surrogacy allowed? Okay, that's a modern issue. It didn't exist at time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So therefore, today's scholars have to go back to original sources and try to figure out, is this permitted or not, okay? And on what basis? And so they have to come up with their decision. So there are always going to be, even when they first started doing artificial insemination, it was the same question. Is this permissible? Can we do this? So there's always been some ongoing discussion about modern technology and developments. And for the most part, Islam is not opposed to science or technology or development, but we do look at everything from a moral perspective. Is this something that would have been permitted at the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him? So we do look at everything from the lens of the lifetime of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, 1400 years ago. On the other hand, there are a lot of issues within Islamic thought that are not black and white. You know, one of the things people often struggle with when they first come to the faith, if they convert, is that there's no, you know, there are some things that are, you know, drinking is forbidden, okay? Pork is forbidden. There are some things that are very clear cut, but then there are other things that are sort of, there are some evidence this way, there's some evidence that way, it may not be as clear. And so within those issues, there are different perspectives, different ideologies, different schools of thought. And so within those sort of undefined topics, there is room for interpretation. And so there are people who interpret things more modern, there are some who are more traditional. So definitely there is some room for that. But generally speaking, we go back to the traditions. So hopefully that kind of answers your question.
Is alcohol forbidden?
Yes, alcoholic beverages and any intoxicants, drugs, anything that's not taken for medicinal purposes is forbidden, yes. So a really good book on that topic, I don't know if you want to read it, it's called Misquoting Muhammad, and it's written by Jonathan Brown, and he sort of tackles the issue of modernity and development of Islamic thought over time. So that might be a book you might want to read on that topic. Sorry, it's a long book too, so I apologize. But any other questions? Yes?
So Muhammad was one among thousands of prophets,
Yes.
right? What makes him special? I get the sense that he's special.
Yeah, so it's actually an issue of debate about his specialness amongst the theologians, but basically we regard him as the greatest of all the prophets because Prophet Muhammad was chosen to be the last of all the prophets. So one of the key components of our theology is that we have to believe that he was the last and that there would be no prophets after him. And so therefore that is a coveted honor, you know, to be that last one. And he was also the only prophet who delivered a universal message, meaning for all peoples, all nations, and all times. Whereas the other prophets were sent to their specific peoples. So for instance, you know, Moses was sent to the Jews and Jesus was sent to reform the Jews, right? So we sort of believe that they were sent to a particular time and place. And therefore, that's why we believe our laws are the final say on law. But everything that came before, the laws could have been the same or different. For instance, for some religions before Islam, they may have permitted alcohol or forbidden it. But we believe since it was finally forbidden with Prophet Muhammad, that it's then finally forbidden. So just to give an example, okay? You know, he's special in that sense, you know? It's generally believed by mainstream Muslims that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the greatest of all of the prophets, because we have a story in our tradition called the Isra and Miraj. So it's called the Ascension, and during the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he ascended first to Jerusalem and then to the heavens. And when he went to Jerusalem, he led the prayer of all the prophets who passed before him. So we believe that to mean that he was greater than, you know, he was considered the leader among all of the other prophets. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, any other questions? How long is what?
How long did he live on earth?
Did he live on earth? 63 years. Yes. Any other questions? Okay.
I guess I have one more. It's kind of a controversial question.
No problem.
I mean it in a controversial way.
That's fine, don't worry.
I did once go to a mosque. I was with the people that were standing in solidarity with the mosque in Worcester that was broken into.
Uh-huh.
And I actually didn't stand on the street, but I don't know why, but some people went inside.
Yeah, we invited some folks to come in for a tour and to listen to the sermon. Yeah.
Yeah, and people are so welcoming. But I noticed, and I know that you said that the women are equal to the men, but the women sit at the back. And of course, in Christianity, there are sects of people who say women are equal to men, but yet women have certain roles and men have certain roles.
Okay.
And
Yep.
so I'm just wondering, maybe
You want a little explanation?
is that
Sure.
Would you consider that women, that some people consider women to be beneath their husbands or beneath men? Would that be more of a political idea and not a religious idea? Or
Okay. I'll answer it as best I can. So it's actually kind of like 3 or 4 questions in one, but that's fine. So when you went into the mosque and the women were seated at the back and they pray at the back, I don't know if you stayed through the whole prayer or just for the sermon, and the men were seated at the front. For us, there's really no preference to front or back. It's not really that, oh, the front is the good place and the back is the bad place. In fact, our tradition is that men line up from front to back and women line up from back to front. And you'll notice when you go into Islamic institutions like mosques or schools that there's a gender separation typically. Okay, and typically in places where there are large groups or large crowds. So you may have noticed there were like 300-400 people there that day, maybe 500. On our holidays, there could be 5,000 or 6,000. And you may have noticed there were separate doors. There's a door for men, there's a door for women. So we don't interact with people who are the opposite gender that are not our family. In the sense that we interact only with them on a professional level. So for instance, if a man were to pray next to me, and he wasn't my husband or my uncle or my father or someone that I'm familiar with, he'd be a stranger to me, I wouldn't touch him, I wouldn't shake his hand, I wouldn't give him a hug. I would consider that a sin, okay? And he would consider it the same also. And that's part of how we observe physical modesty. So if I were to have a man praying next to me, I don't know if you saw the prayer, we actually pray like literally side by side where we don't leave gaps in between one another. We believe that Satan goes in the gaps, okay? And we believe that this is part of our fellowship, right? The sisterhood or the brotherhood. And so the woman that would be praying next to me would literally have her leg touching my leg, her arm touching my arm, her shoulder touching my shoulder, and we would go into prostration. So you guys may have noticed Muslim people prostrate. You know, you put your head and your nose on the ground and your hands on the ground. And so you'd be literally touching arms and legs. It's very close, it's very tight. It would be very uncomfortable, at least for me personally, to do that surrounded by two men that I don't know, okay, who are not my relatives, right? So the separation between men and women is for the comfort of both men and women in that scenario, because we are encouraged to pray closely and to be united in facing God, okay? So that's one thing. The other thing is that you know, we want to remain extremely focused during prayer. So if I'm in prayer and my phone rings, I don't look at it to see who's calling. I won't get out of prayer and go check my messages. If I'm thirsty, I won't take a break and get a drink. I'm in prayer till I'm finished, okay? And I'm completely focused just on God. I'm not supposed to be thinking about or doing anything else. In fact, if I even change direction, it invalidates my prayer. Okay, so therefore I don't want to be thinking about the man behind me. Can he see my bottom when I'm prostrating? The man next to me, is he touching me? That would be way too distracting. So instead of being focused on worship and on godliness, I'm now concerned about who's touching me, who's looking at me, and that is an extremely uncomfortable position to be in. So therefore, when we pray in a separate location. Men being in the front, women being, is just simply easier for women to not worry about who's looking at her or who might be staring. And it's also, it helps everyone to remain focused, to be separated by gender. So that's the reasoning why. And it's not because men are better than women or women are better than men. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever. The separation of doors and things like that is for convenience. So if I come in the winter and I'm taking off my boots and I'm bending over, and there's 100 different men coming in at the same time, I don't want to be worried about bumping into them. And so when I'm going about society, like not in the mosque, I'm really cautious and careful. I wait for my space. I don't want to bump into people who I don't know. So that's just sort of like a space thing that I observe when I go out, and most Muslim people do this as well. I personally, although you may meet Muslim people who do, I don't shake hands with people of the opposite sex. Okay, so even if they put out their hand, I say, I'm so sorry, please don't be offended. It's a religious practice. I just don't shake hands with men. Sometimes they get offended and sometimes they understand, but that's my practice. I have plenty of friends that do shake hands with men because they just don't want the, you know, they don't want the scrutiny, they don't want to explain themselves, they just think it's easier to just shake hands and get it over with and walk away, and they also don't want to take the risk of offending another person. So regardless, but how people practice is slightly different. In Muslim people's homes, you'll find that some homes are very stringent in terms of gender separation, and others are very open. So if I invite people to my home, men and women, if they're with their families, we're all in the same space, you know, we eat in the same space, we do everything. But I do know Muslim people who have a separate entrance for men and a separate entrance for women. It's a minority of people, but it definitely happens. So gender separation is something which is not meant to put women in a worse place or to assume that she's lower, but really it's for the comfort of both genders to exercise the maximum amount of modesty and the maximum amount of comfort in their different daily lives. So that's sort of it. As for you asking if it's a political thing, there definitely is patriarchy, right? It's not part of Islam, it's not part of our religious teachings. There is social and cultural patriarchy which exists in every country. I mean, it exists in America, it exists in Middle Eastern countries, and you will see that, oftentimes people do have this attitude that, women are beneath me or whatever. It's not often, and it's not related to religion, but it is definitely something that, does exist. It's not pertaining to our faith. We're definitely not taught that. But yes, I mean, you can say some cultures do have a sort of patriarchal mentality. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
And at
Yeah.
home, when you dress, if you choose to cover when you're out, at home, do women just...
That would just be so uncomfortable. Obviously, when I'm at home, as long as there are no strange men in my home, I'm not covered up. I would wear whatever. There's a certain standard even between women. Like I wouldn't show anything between like my navel and my knees, even to other women. But I might wear a shorter skirt. I might wear pants. I might wear a t-shirt or a tank top. It's not really an issue. It would be a major hardship if we had to be covered up all the time. Obviously, I don't take a shower like this. So I've actually had people ask me, do you keep that on all the time? Do you sleep with that on? No, obviously I don't. But if a male comes to visit, or if I have to answer the door, I'll slip something on and I'll go answer the door. So when I'm in front of strangers, yes. When I'm home, no. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming, and I'm here. Oh, thank you so much. It's not necessary. If you have another question, you can come up. I'll be here for a few more minutes, or I can hand you a business card if you want to stay in touch. Thanks again for having me.